Everyone belongs to a culture. This is the group of people with whom you may share physical traits, language, food, traditions, and even ancestry. Globalization allegedly started with Christopher Columbus sailing the ocean blue back in 1492. You know, when he was looking for India but found America instead, and now I have to correct my parents every time they refer to indigenous people as Native Indians. When all of that started, the explorers of that time could have never foretold that they would be catalysts of a modern global network in which all of us are actively connected. That globalization and subsequent intercommunication, news delivery, and travel allowed people from opposite sides of the world with two completely different stories to meet and create anew. And we can only go up from here. With all of this interconnectivity, you may or may not have heard the term cultural awareness or cultural sensitivity flying around. But what exactly is cultural awareness, and what does it mean to be culturally aware in everyday life? Keep watching to find out.
Excuse racism, but I draw the line at animal cruelty.
You can excuse racism.
Merriam-Webster defines racism as the belief that race is the primary determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. I believe this goes without saying, but you cannot have prejudice and be culturally aware. Cultural awareness and discrimination of any kind exist on opposite sides of a spectrum. Racism at its core is a classification tool that has been systematically weaponized throughout the centuries and only serves to cause harm to both the people who wield it and the people who experience it. Even the most seemingly harmless thoughts, like all Asians love to study, Latin Americans don't want to learn English, and black men are thugs, can create a vacuum of assumptions about people that will eventually cloud your judgment when interacting with them in everyday life. And you know what they say about people who assume. So if you want to be culturally aware and be able to connect and relate with people regardless of their nationality or upbringing, you will need to unlearn everything you may have been taught about a specific demographic of people. Because that's all it is, a demographic, a picture painted based on the basics of the collective but does not highlight the experiences of the individual. For more information on how to be anti-racist, the University of Washington has some great resources on how to start, including Ibram X. Kendi's 2019 book, How to Be an Anti-Racist.
Crisis spreading across Eastern Europe is now at the doorstep of the United States. Families fleeing Ukraine and Russia, fearing for their lives, flying to Mexico, which, unlike the United States, does not require a visa, then making their way up to Tijuana.
Being culturally aware also means treating all migrants you encounter with respect. According to Amnesty International, the terms refugee, asylum seeker, and migrant are used to describe people who have left their countries and have crossed borders. It's especially important to differentiate between the terms refugee and migrant because they legally mean different things. A refugee is a person who has fled their own country because they are at risk of serious human rights violations there. The risks to their safety were so great that they felt they had no choice but to leave and seek safety outside of their country because their own government cannot or will not protect them from those dangers. Refugees have a right to international protection. Like refugees, asylum seekers leave their home countries to avoid human rights infringements. However, unlike refugees, they have to be given this status as they wait for a decision to be made on their claim for legal protection. Some huge examples of world conflicts that displaced a lot of refugees and asylum seekers is the Venezuelan crisis, the Israeli-Palestinian war, consequences of the Syrian civil war, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. All these are just a few of multiple catastrophes and are all still ongoing. Migrants are people who leave their home country for non-dangerous reasons such as school, work, joining other family members, etc. The immigration system, specifically in the United States, is very flawed, has a lot of gray areas, and people consequently have mixed views surrounding immigrants of any status. But it's important to remember that in the pursuit of cultural awareness, we have to remain respectful of people's journeys and circumstances. Refugees, asylum seekers, and migrants only serve to enrich the cultures they join by sharing customs, foods, languages, and worldly perspectives other people might not have otherwise considered. According to Vox EDU, They can even help with fostering international trade and investment. But above all else, we should respect and advocate for refugees and asylum seekers in particular, because many of these people are from cultures that would or will soon be considered endangered, and each culture should have a preserved place in human history. Many of these people will never see their home as they once saw it ever again. Instead of scorning them, let us embrace them and allow them to share with us as we share with them. TED Ideas has a wonderful article outlining the ways we can all help refugees, which I've linked in the description box below.
So if you're from Africa, why are you white?
Oh my god, Karen, you can't just ask people why they're white.
So if you are interacting with someone from a different culture than you and you make a tiny faux pas, I promise you, you will not be publicly shamed. Unless you're a celebrity. I make no promises there. Things escalate quickly on the internet. However, when you make these faux pas, have the self-awareness to recognize your mistake either on your own or with the help of the offended person and make the effort to do better. Self-awareness and cultural awareness is being able to remind yourself that the way you grew up and the way you were taught is simply your experience, and you'll meet tons of other people with tons of other experiences.
We've got to show these Richards that they aren't welcome here.
What do you mean?
How about tonight, we sneak up to one of their houses, and right on their lawn, we'll set fire to a big lowercase t.
Lowercase t?
Yeah, for time to leave.
The ignorance behind discrimination, bias, and general insensitivity stems from fear, which creates a lack of desire to learn. In a 2019 article, the Harvard Gazette reported on a study done by social scientists to get to the root of racial tensions. The scientists ended up finding a correlation between fear of exposure to potential infectious diseases with implicit prejudice. And I can see how that correlation could be made, and it definitely stretches beyond that. I think fear drives a lot of the decisions our collective society makes. I think how we spread that fear affects how people interact with each other on the day-to-day. After all, fear is why you might cross the street if you see a black man walking toward you. It's why Middle Eastern people are susceptible to more profiling in places of travel. It's even why HIV/AIDS was labeled a gay disease when it reached its peak outbreak in the late 80s and 90s, and is still often low-key advertised as one to this day. Fear is the catalyst for all biases and discrimination hurled against marginalized communities. Some fears that might prevent cultural awareness is when one group sees another group of people as competition. Corporate America is the biggest benefiter of this fear because either way, they get hardworking employees for just a fraction of the appropriate price, yet the people at the bottom of the pyramid still fight each other instead of working together. Isn't that the exact opposite of the Thanksgiving program story we were all fed in primary school? Another common fear that might prevent widespread cultural awareness is the belief that by accepting and participating with another culture that is shared with us, we are turning our backs on our own, or we are allowing a part of our identity to eventually be forgotten. There are many cultures in this world that are dedicated to ensuring their roots stand the test of time. Younger generations may see themselves making life decisions based on whether it will uphold the family line. Should I marry outside my culture? Should I continue to speak my family language even though it is a linguistic minority? Do I let my eager outsider friends or my stepchildren participate in my traditions and customs? I'm sure many of us have thought to some degree how a simple choice about how we live our lives might affect the rest of the people with which we share cultural ties. But to the people who fear that, riddle me this. Do you think your culture invented the language, customs, and traditions you hold so dear all on their own? In this day and age, every culture is an evolution of a previous one. The Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, Romanian, and French languages all share Latin as an ancestor. The Caribbean has strong genetic and cultural ties to Africa, as do Afro-descended peoples around the world. South America has mixed heritage of indigenous and Spaniard relations. Spain is a European country, yet shares many cultural ties with the Mediterranean family. We could backtrack and read and research all we want, but the truth is, most of us will never truly know where we got our traditions from. But cultural awareness allows us to share and eventually create traditions and customs our descendants will cherish as part of their identity someday. Change and evolution is a good thing. Cultural awareness is not knowing everything about everyone, but challenging yourself to learn at least one thing about someone else. I'd like to think that because I am a Black child of immigrants from a Latin American/Caribbean country, that I should be one of the most culturally aware and tolerant people on this planet. But I'm not. I've gotten it wrong. I've made mistakes. I've assumed more times than I can count on my fingers. I am not an expert on how to be culturally aware in every situation. I think the biggest reason I've come this far is that when it really counts, I've forced myself to close my mouth and open my mind and truly listen to what someone else is saying. Whether I agree with them is unnecessary. Everyone needs to be heard. It is not only a human need, but what most democratic societies are built on. I really hope this video helped you learn some new things. The mission of Heritagio is to spread cultural awareness one story at a time. Right now, we are starting with me as I journey to become the most tolerant I can be, but I hope it doesn't end with me. If you have some insight or a story to share, please fill out my involvement form and we can collaborate on something together. If you like this video, please give it a like, and if you want to see more videos about cultural awareness, please hit the subscribe button and click on the bell so you can be the first to know when a new video is dropped. What does cultural awareness mean to you? Leave a comment below. Until next time, thank you for watching Heritagio.